for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and get started. This is a webinar in our Scaling Up series that is funded by the Kellogg Foundation, the WBK Kellogg Foundation. A few housekeeping items for today. We are going to go through this. I will turn it over to Tommy Peterson, who is our guest presenter today, to talk about some experience in ag banking and some of the accessing credit revenue avenues for working in an ag operation in Indian country. At the end, we will have questions and answers. So if you would like, you can ask a question by typing it in the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel, and we will be able to answer from there, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone. So with that, I will get started. My name is Blake Jackson. I am policy officer and a staff attorney at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, and we thank you guys for having us today, and we will get into this material here now. So for those of you that are new to joining us, we are the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. We are located at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We were founded in the School of Law in 2013, where we remain today. We were initially founded by Professor Emeritus and Dean Emeritus Professor Stacy Leeds, who is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and our founding director, Janie Sims Hipp, who is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation and was previously on faculty here before taking a role at USDA to head up the Office of Tribal Relations under this administration of Secretary Vilsack and President Obama. And the two of them had, been long contacts in this field, and given their background in Native law and knowing connections throughout Indian country, saw a real need for serving tribal producers and those in the larger context of food sovereignty, trying to get this infrastructure going in ag development within Indian country, and saw that there was a great opportunity to pair outreach in that field here at the University of Arkansas with the already existing ag law curriculum in the law school. So that was kind of a great partnership that founded us, and we've continued to grow the mission today. Our mission is basically threefold. We focus on advancing healthy food systems, diversified economic development, and cultural food traditions in Indian country. And we focus mainly in doing this through enhancing the health and wellness in tribal communities. And if you ask us, kind of in practice what this means for our work, essentially it means that we like to think that we are putting the tribal sovereignty in the larger context of food sovereignty. Because as we know, our food systems have suffered the aftermath of colonization. And frankly, we know that sovereignty has a very specific and deliberate meaning in Indian country, and it has since time immemorial. And we really want to emphasize that as we provide the strategic legal analysis, policy research, and educational resources to empower Indian country through food sovereignty, agriculture, and economic development, and exercising our larger mission. Our work is very broad, and our portfolio continues to grow. We have a model tribal food and agriculture code that we have drafted for tribes to take these model laws that may support food and ag on their reservation and implement them in their own code. We are the research partner to the Native Farm Bill Coalition, which is the largest ever coordinated effort in Indian country around federal food, agriculture, and nutrition policy. We are the Native Tribal Center for Food Safety Outreach, Education, Training, and Technical Assistance for the FDA under the Food Safety Modernization Act. Every year we host a Native Youth and Food and Agriculture Leadership Summit where we bring students of Native background on campus, and they have opportunities for professional development and skills development at the University of Arkansas. We do that for a week, and that offers a great networking opportunity for them as they build their careers. We just finished year 7 of that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to bring everybody on campus due to the context of the pandemic that we're in, but it was nonetheless a very well attended event, and excited to continue that work. We do a lot of cultivating tribal food sovereignty outreach, where we facilitate agriculture production through food sovereignty. This project that we're working on here is Food and Agriculture Scaling Up, where we work with showing agriculture production tools and economic forecast models to help build strong tribal food businesses and food systems. We have policy research and analysis of industrial hemp production. Be looking for more resources on that in the coming weeks, as the USDA just released the final regulation on that. And we work a lot in the areas of food security and access through the development of educational resources and research for child nutrition and food access programs in Indian country. At this time, I would like to introduce our guest presenter today, Tommy Peterson. She is the Assistant Director for the American Indian Foods Program at the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We are very thankful for their support and partnership in many of our efforts, including these. And she has the perspective of being an ag lender, and as that is something she has done in her career. And I, at this point, will turn the presentation over to her so that she can go through her slides and we can follow up with a question and answer period if there's any questions that you guys have. So at this time, Tommy, I'm going to change the presenter over to you, or Whitney's got it. So whenever you have your slides ready to go, we will be good. Looks like you're having no issues. So I will turn it over and mute my microphone.
Alrighty, can you hear me?
Perfect.
All right. So my name's Tommy Peterson. I'm a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe located in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. I am also grew up on a cattle ranch and I'm a producer myself. And then I went and got a degree in business economics and finances at Black Hills State, and I became an ag banker, is exactly what my title was, at a community bank here in South Dakota. I did that for a few years, and then I became a technical assistant for the Great Plains region for Intertribal Agriculture Council. So I've been able to be on a lot of different sides of the table when it comes to ag lending. Of course, I've been a producer on the other side of FSA in the bank, and then I've been the lender, and then I've been the outside third party who gets to deal with the in-between stuff. So I have kind of a weird perspective on ag lending. But today I would just like to maybe go through what the differences are between the options and showing you where these lending options are coming from to know why your relationship with the Farm Service Agency loan program may be different than your local bank, and how they can help you in your operation. And then I do just like to give a few tips at the end to maybe that give you going forward. So from an overview, I'll talk about, of course, the Farm Service Agency loan program. I'm going to talk about community development financial institutions, CDFIs, and then I'll talk about your local banks and credit unions. Of course, when it comes to the FSA, that is administered, of course, through the United States Department of Agriculture. It is your government option. So when it comes down to it, it is highly regulated. It is has a very strict handbook they have to deal with. And of course, when policies change, the handbook changes, like their work with the Farm Bill. When the Farm Bill changes, these programs will change as well. Right now, I can explain to you exactly what the loan limits are and what they have available, but that can change in the future. They do have the ability to have market their money in different areas. So they do have specific funding they need to spend on minorities, of course, that'd be Native Americans, on women, and that kind of affects their programs as well. But yeah, so if I did explain it, there is microloans through FSA that are great for your smaller operations. Then they have normal operating loans funds that are just for your normal ranch operating, buying machinery, stuff like that. And then they have with the farm ownership, which is to buy real estate. It would be to buy residential with farm land with it. Just a quick example of FSA in Indian country. You have a farmer that is operating and has the ability to purchase extra farmland, but this person lives in an area that is considered a credit desert, which happens a lot on reservations. That if you showed a map of the country and reservations, reservations have the least amount of credit available, or they did at one point in time, but hopefully that's changing in the future. But due to these circumstances, traditional financing is difficult to obtain, especially since real estate loans are usually longer term and you need access to more capital. So FSA's ownership loan program was one of the only viable lending options for John to be able to purchase those additional acres. Then they also have, of course, I talked about FSA right now has targeted loan audiences. Your youth loans, which are, they kind of partner with 4-H and FFA for smaller projects that deal with youth. But then they have to target minorities, women, and your beginning farm ranchers are those major target areas that they're trying to get out there. And just a quick example would be a young individual currently looking to start her own sheep herd. There's not many landing options for beginning producers in her area, especially in Indian country. So FSA's operating loan program is a good option and is suitable for many beginning farmer ranchers. They have terms that are different than a bank. So they are able to get funding to help her start her herd, as well as operating loans to cover those expenses at loan terms that are maybe more feasible or reasonable for a young producer starting out. Then they also have specialty loans through the Farm Service Agency. There's guaranteed loan program, which this loan program is specifically for a bank to use. So when I was a banker and I needed maybe help with a customer's loan, maybe there was more risk involved, they were a young producer, in order to get them approved through my through my loan board, I needed something to back them. So I could go through the FSA and would get what's called a guaranteed loan. And the work is done by the banker themselves. They go through the process of getting it, but then the producer does have to pay for it as a percentage, but that is helpful. There's many times I did that with larger real estate loans. I would go to FSA to get what's called a 90% guarantee. So there's just something on the back end to be able to get their loan approved. So that is something to keep in the back of your mind when you're working with bankers out there, that there is this program out there for local banks to use. And also there's specialty loans there for emergencies. This is, of course, due to weather emergencies, but this last year shown us that the pandemic as well is an emergency. So FSA is able to go out there and provide options that other local banks weren't able to provide. And I always like to throw in there that there is a great farm loan discovery tool that FSA has. You go to farmers.gov/fund and you click start. It'll kind of go through all these different options and maybe help you see if there is something that can help fit your specific needs. And then I also do like to note Intertribal Agriculture Council's technical assistants that are throughout the country can also help you with those loan applications, can help you get the right application and also with the application process. So final note though, so when you're you go into an FSA office, dealing with somebody that it's with the government, there's a strict handbook they have to go by. They're going to be very, very involved in your operation. They are, from the day when you go in there to the day you leave, they will be involved. They ask for maybe more paperwork and more red tape and more hoops to jump through, but they are providing an option to people who wouldn't have one in other categories, especially your beginning farmer ranchers. There's just not that option out there. And FSA does have the best interest rate out there. They have provided interest rates low enough to help people pay it back. And so because they're helping the producers out there that can't go to a normal bank or a normal credit union or something of that sort. So they do ask you to jump through more hoops and do more paperwork. But at the end, they are providing a very viable option for people out there. So when you go into the office, I've heard a lot of people that struggle with FSA because they're so involved in your operation. But when it comes down to it, when they're providing you with that low of an interest rate and they're providing you an option you can't get anywhere else, they're going to be more involved. The next one I'll talk about is Community Development Financial Institutions, CDFIs. These are been around for a while. They're popping up all over the country. They're a financial institution that is more has a target market. They're not run by the government. They're grant and government funded, but they're not regulated by the government like a bank is. So they do have more leverage in their lending options and what they can and cannot do with their loan portfolios. So they can reach out to just be a native specific CDFI, and there's also agriculture specific CDFIs, and then there's one that's just for native agriculture, which I'll just point out real quick like after this. But When you go into a CDFI, you're going to someone who's not regulated like a bank, and they're not controlled by the government like FSA. So they have more leverage, but then they also don't have as much capital to use. They may not be able to give you as much funds as the other options, but they're a great tool. They're popping up all over the country. I would go to nativecdfi.net to see if there's one in your local area, get in contact with them. They're doing good work out there. And they may have an option that the next guy won't have. There is some cool things that the next one I'll talk about is Occuton. This is a CDFI that is just for Native American agriculture. It is a nationwide one, and they're able to provide non-typical loan options because they're not regulated like a bank. So they're able to do maybe longer term, maybe change your interest rate different. They have called it an investment option. And these are things that it will continue to change because they are not regulated like a normal bank. Of course, at the end of the day, they still need to have a positive portfolio, so you still have to be a producer that is going to want to profit at the end, but they might be able to help you where the other two options cannot. Also, so the last one, we'll talk about local banks and credit unions. So as a producer out there, you're going to use a local bank anyways for your account services. You're going to have a checking account, a savings account, stuff like that. So I always advise that being a banker's friend is never a bad thing. They can play a vital role in helping a business obtain your financing, maximize business funds, and helping producers achieve their goals. Yeah, if you're a beginning producer, or if you're never had a good relationship with a bank before, sometimes it's hard, but at the end of the day, there's going to be those community banks out there anyways, and they're able to provide. They're usually your egg banker at a local bank is probably the same person that you're going to be sitting next to at that football game on Friday night. So it's going to be another community member, and that person might know your area, might know the agricultural side of things of your area more than FSA, who's regulated by the government, which they have to fill a handbook that covers anywhere from Oregon to Florida, where your local bank has a board of directors more likely that is from your area, that knows your area. So they might actually be able to understand your situation better than Farm Service Agency and I also do point out that your local community banks that are just community driven, that know that area, could be more helpful. And at the end of the day, when there's emergencies too, there's some leverage there. That egg lender at a local bank isn't controlled by the government, but they are, of course, regulated heavily. But at the end of the day, the policies that they have to go by are done by a board of directors. So it's different than working with FSA because there may be more leverage. That egg banker has to put your request together and then get it usually approved by a loan board. So if they ask questions or they're trying to work with you to get that done, usually the egg banker is always on your side. They're usually your cheerleader rooting for you to get put on their bank, because of course egg bankers want to grow their portfolio. It's the same thing with credit unions. If you hear about Farmers Union or Farm Credit, those are more of a member driven. They're not done by a board of directors, and they have co-options as well, but it's the same kind of idea. Usually those are people that are that know the area and they know the agriculture specific to the area that they're serving. So I always like to point out that local bank credit unions are good to have on your team at the end of the day. Just a couple of tips I always point out to people. I always like to tell people at the end of the day, you're responsible for your financing. I would say to know your numbers better than anybody else. And then if you're a beginning person out there, or if you have been in the business a while, but you're gonna approach a lender of any kind, it doesn't matter which lender it is, if it's FSA or local bank, the first step I would always advise is to do an evaluation of yourself, that why you are in the business in agriculture, why you're a farmer rancher, or why you want to be a farmer rancher. And then if you're able to answer that question confidently, you should be able to convey that confidence then to that potential lender. You know what you're doing, know why you're doing it, and then lenders usually can be able to sense the confidence in the producers that come in the door. The next one, this one's kind of boring, but having a written business plan. I worked with a lot of farmer ranchers out there who knew exactly what they wanted and how they were going to do it, but they never wrote that plan down. So if you actually write it down and create a formal ranch business plan that explains those two things, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, that makes it so much easier for then that egg lender to then go and throw those numbers together to write that up and take that to a board to be approved. It kind of gives that complete picture of your operation. It's helpful for you as a producer, but it's really helpful for that lender to be able to see that you've done that work and you know the details behind your operation. And then, of course, the last one's really boring, but having accurate records. When it comes down to it, numbers are vital to a loan decision. So your records need to be up to date and accurate. You know, those three things: your balance sheet, that income and expense form, and then your cash flow projections, what you're planning for the next year, need to be, you know, pretty clean. Because if you give numbers that are questionable or not quite accurate, it can affect your loan decision for one, but it's much harder than for that lender to put things together if the numbers aren't right. So I do like to tell people that having accurate records is very, very helpful. And then I also, if you use a record keeping service, whether it's some fancy form, which I always throw a couple of free ones out there, that Ranch Management and Farm Writer, pretty cool. Or you're just writing it down. I do like to advise people that you are running a business. I know you're from a rancher, you know, you're in agriculture, doesn't seem like you need to do that as much, but having a very accurate record keeping service will be very helpful, because it is, at the end of the day, it is business and you need to be responsible for your numbers, not just rely on your egg lender to keep track of that stuff for you. And that is all I have for right now.
Thank you very much. You know, I know we had a little bit of time built in for questions and answers, but to kind of set the stage for maybe some conversation with the audience, you know, before kind of getting into that, you know, I had a couple questions for you. You know, one, kind of based on your experience, what is kind of the most common obstacle you see to some of the clients that you worked with, maybe being able to access credit, and kind of how would you advise maybe overcoming that?
I think the biggest obstacle is that they don't understand that how much it takes that you have to have in it to get a loan from a normal loan financing, you know, that down payment. So if you were a normal person, you were going to go buy a pickup, there's a lot of chances you're going to need to have money down. But for farmers and ranchers, they rarely think that they need to have money down to do anything. And so I think we need producers out there that think more like a business and to realize that they need to have something more into it. They need to realize that equity, which is what you own of your assets, needs to be growing, because at the end of the day, those bankers, they're looking at percentages and ratios and boring stuff. That's the stuff that's going to make the decision of your loan. So I do think there needs to be maybe more education out there for producers to understand those numbers more, and that is a barrier, education for people. And FSA is great about helping those people that are in those situations where they aren't able to, you know, have the equity in operation. They're beginning, you know, just starting out. But I do think that there isn't enough education when they're in FSA. There needs to be more of that one-on-one teaching them how these numbers work kind of deal. They do have requirements where they do make beginning farmer ranchers go to classes to learn about business finance management and stuff like that, but I do think it needs to be more one-on-one. As a technical assistant, I have done that in the past, you know, a lot with people starting out and understanding these numbers and how these numbers are going to get to you where you want to be. So I do think that is the biggest barrier out there.
One more question I had for you was, you know, a lot of times the clients may not have the best credit history, or, you know, have really any credit history for that matter, and that, you know, sometimes may or may not pose an obstacle to borrowing. You know, what would you recommend for someone in one of those situations, you know, to be able to access financing for their operation.
Gotcha. Yeah, so if you're in that situation where you don't have credit, or your credit's not very good, I would seek out first options to help your credit score. There is CDFIs have been, and a lot of areas have been doing credit building loans, so they're very small loans, help get you that credit score. Because as annoying as it is, that credit score is something that the banking industry and Farm Service Agency is always going to use. So I would advise trying to get that cleared up. But there is options out there. If you don't have a credit score, it's not the worst thing. I would say that it is better to not have one at all than to have a bad credit score. And I would advise there's those free sites to help see your credit score and what's on there. Because sometimes there's things on there that shouldn't be, especially in Indian country every once in a while, and in IHS, Indian Health Service. Bill or something's on there funny and a judgment's on there that shouldn't be, because one of those things. So I do advise just seeing what's on there for starters, and seeing something that can be quickly cleaned up, or something that can be explained that it's out of the producer's hands. And then at the end of the day, there may be an option that if you do have bad credit or you don't have a credit score, yeah, your normal options like your banks and stuff may not be able to help with that. But FSA might be able to overcome those obstacles, or the local CDFI, because they have different regulations. I do also know that if you're going in there with a really good business plan and your numbers are really good, that the credit score is only one piece of the pie. So if you show you're strong enough and everything else, and you're able to have a good relationship with that ag lender, they may be able to overlook or just not, that credit score may not be as big a deal as you think if you're stronger in other areas.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good perspective, because like you said, sometimes the numbers aren't the whole picture, and there's, at least with the credit score, there's more to think about there for sure. At this time, Whitney, I'm going to turn it back to you to kind of facilitate any questions from the audience that might come through.
Great, thank you, Blake. And if you have any questions, you can submit them through the questions box using your GoToWebinar control panel. But also just, it looks like Tommy also has her contact information available on the screen there. And then we'll also be sharing out a recording of the webinar after to all registrants for the webinar. So if you have any questions or need references at a later time, you can do that. But we'll give it just a couple of minutes for questions to come in. But Tommy, we really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so look like we have any other questions coming in at this time, but like I said, thank you all for taking the time out of your morning or afternoon and joining us. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team and we can follow up with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Big thank you to Tommy as well.
Thank you.